Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good evening, everyone. It is Sunday, July the 4th, 2021. It is currently 6:08 p.m. Central Time. And once again, I'm here in the sanctuary of Victory Baptist Church. I'm here in Ovalo, Texas. And yes, the sanctuary, unfortunately, is empty tonight. Yeah, I'm not happy about that, but no in-person services. Too many people gone. But even though other people are gone, that should never stop me from coming up here and turning on the microphone. No matter how, I guess as long as someone is paying to keep the lights on, the internet connected, as long as the church can maintain certain things, and as long as, and I'm going to keep coming up here and doing whatever I can to hopefully benefit and minister to people. Now, I've been sitting here debating what to do, and I'm not convinced that what I'm about to do is the right thing to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. And here's the reason that I'm concerned that it's not the right thing to do. Let me explain what's been going on. All right. So if you've been following our Sunday school messages, we have been we've been studying the Niagara Creed. Today, this morning was part 35. 35 messages on the Niagara Creed. Now, if you know anything about the Niagara Creed, it only has 14 paragraphs. 14 paragraphs. We're on part 35, and we're only on paragraph 10. All right. So that is turned into and the direction the study has taken, I'm not completely happy with it. I mean, this is the thing about being a pastor. You're always second guessing what you're studying, what you're doing, what you're trying to do, because you sometimes you've got, this is going to be great. And then you realize, this is going to be, okay, we're going to have to do this, going to have to do that. And then sometimes you can grow very frustrated because you're like, at every turn, you could go another direction, and then you're like, okay, how do I see this through and bring this home and hopefully benefit everyone? So that's the Niagara Creed study is getting bigger and bigger. And then we're in Romans 8. We took a kind of a detour this morning. It's still very much related to Romans 8, but it tried to take the theology we've been learning about God's providence and then looking at it in light of the situation that happened in Miami with the condo that collapsed. And I think it was very good and very important message, but it kind of took us a little detour, and then we've got to get back into Romans 8, and we're dealing with so much in Romans 8. I don't know when we're ever going to finish that. And you obviously know that we're obviously doing a Bible study exercise in Psalm 37. And plus, the imitation of Christ, the Christian in complete armor, which I need to get back to. I need to get back to Genesis 15 and figure how we're going to move forward with the VBC Bible Institute. I still need to do that. I got some feedback, not as much feedback as I really needed to know what to do there. So there's always a million things I'm doing. And so the last thing I want to do is to now kind of crack the door that's going to ultimately get shoved open into a never-ending study and series that I don't know how long it's going to take, but I feel obligated to do this. And here's the reason why. I think yesterday I did a podcast episode called Revival or Rapture. Now, there was just to kind of introduce this debate within Christianity, within the world of eschatology, that goes something like this. There are those who stand behind the pulpit, they sit in front of microphones, they look inside into cameras, they look into the camera, and they tell the people this: revival is coming. The Lord is going to pour out his spirit upon all flesh. And there's going to be signs and wonders and visions. And it's going to be absolutely amazing. People are going to be healed. People are going to be raised from the dead. Hospitals are going to be emptied out. And the glory of the Lord is going to fill the earth. And it's going to be amazing. It's going to be glorious. And you're going to see it in your lifetime. It is coming. Revival is coming. And I've been hearing that forever, it seems, in certain areas of Christianity. Now, I always find it kind of confusing because they say that it's coming, that God's Spirit's going to be poured upon all flesh, is going to be visions and dreams and miracles. Well, at the same time, usually those who preach that are claiming that there's visions and miracles happening all the time. So if the visions and miracles are already happening all the time, then are we already experiencing the revival that you're saying it's coming? They say that it's coming at a global scale, and that nobody's going to be able to deny it. It's going to be everywhere. But I keep hearing that it's coming. In fact, sometimes I will be told, again, this is typically in the charismatic world, that, this year, 2014, revival is coming. 2015, revival is coming. 2016, revival is coming. I mean, I've heard it over and over and over and over and over and over. And every time, if they give a year, they've been proven wrong over and over and over and over and over again. I tend to feel that we don't have revivals not coming. Apostasy is coming. A falling away is coming, and it's already underway. I believe that's what's coming. So I already have a problem with this idea. Now, if you're going to say a revival is coming, I guess I believe apostasy is coming. And then, and so if a revival is coming, it's got to come after the falling away. And if it comes after the falling away, then it becomes very confusing. Like, okay, how do we fit this all in? But there are those who say that this prophecy of a worldwide revival and the Spirit being poured out upon all flesh, that it is coming. And they point to basically two passages of Scripture. There's probably more they point to, but two that become very prominent in this is Acts chapter 2 and Joel chapter 2. Now, my goal here for this is part one. Now remember, the Bible study exercises are designed to try to move you from a passive listener to an active participant. I do this by doing some teaching, and then I hand a lot over to you. Sometimes I teach like I know what I'm talking about. Sometimes I teach like I'm not so sure. I don't know the answer, because I'm trying to get you involved in the process. I hope some people will participate in this one, because I think it deals with a lot. I mean, there is that teaching out there that the revival is coming. Now, there's another teaching, just to make sure that we understand this, is that you got the teaching of a revival is coming. There's another teaching out there that says you're going to have apostasy, rapture, then when the church is gone, then the revival. So is it true that revival is coming? The issue is just the timing of it. Is there a revival coming before the rapture? Is there a revival coming after the rapture? Or is there no revival coming, period? Again, all kind of different schools of thought and eschatology come into play here. But whenever here's what we have to do. I want to make sure that this is very, 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 very important. And members of Victory Baptist Church know what I'm getting ready to say here. All right. There's all of these arguments, all of these schools of thought, all of these different schools of eschatology. All right. Arguing revival, rapture, apostasy. Okay. What we have to do is we have to listen for the scriptures that are offered up. And Acts 2 and Joel 2 is offered up. So then what we have to do is then take the scriptures. Now listen to me. And as we look at the scriptures, we throw out all of these different schools of thought. It doesn't matter your eschatology, amillennial, premillennial, dispensational, doesn't matter what you hold to. You throw them all out. Because we have to study the text and figure out what the text tells us by doing observational study and not trying to observe the text through the lens of these presuppositions that your systems of theology can produce. If your system of theology, your system of eschatology can simply become a lens that you use to read the Bible, and then you're going to always find it in the Bible because that's the lens you're looking at it. If you take your system of eschatology and you put it on as a pair of glasses, you're going to find your system of eschatology on every page of Scripture. You have to take your system of eschatology, and I know I always use this graphic language, but sometimes our little system of theology, our little system of eschatology, it's like our little pet. Look, here's Fluffy. Here's my theology. Well, Fluffy's got to go out back, and Fluffy's got to be put down. Now, I love animals, so I'm not calling for the actual hurting of an animal, but for your presupposition, your theological presuppositions have to be put down. They have to be ended so that you can come back and observe the text without them. Now, after observing the text, if you discover that, wow, my presupposition was correct, then you got to go out back and try to revive it. Okay. Then, clear, and you've got to try to bring it back. Okay. But in the meantime, it's of no value to you when you're trying to look at the text. You want to observe the text. So what we're going to do is we're going to set aside I don't know what system of eschatology you hold to. I don't know what you believe about a coming revival, coming apostasy. Who cares? We've got two passages of scripture we have to figure out. Acts 2 and Joel 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little reading, but I'm going to do a lot of handing you some assignments. And I've got a commentary here called The Minor Prophets, Way of Life Commentary Series. I've got that. I got a Bible dictionary here open to the book of Joel. I got plenty of resources here that we could start working on. But I'm not going to do that for this. I'm going to try to place this before you. Now, I don't know how many people will participate. Nobody participates. I'll come back and do some work on it, but hopefully a lot of people will participate because I think this could be very beneficial. Here's what we need to do. All right. First, we need to go to Acts chapter 2. Now, I know you could argue we need to start in Joel, then go to Acts, but we're going to start in Acts and work our way back to Joel. Why did I decide to do it that way? Because I just decided to do it that way, all right? Here we go, all right? I think there's a reason to do that. So if you don't, let's get a basic idea of what's going on in Acts chapter 2, if you don't know. The day of Pentecost was fully come. They were all with one accord in one place. Got the disciples, everyone's there. They've been told to go there. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them. And they were filled with the Holy Ghost and began to speak with other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men, out of every nation under heaven. So you got Jews, devout men of every nation under heaven. They're all there, okay? Now, when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded because every man heard them speak in his own language. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, Behold, are not all of these which speak Galileans? And now hear we every man who were in our own tongue, wherein we were born. So clearly, they now have the ability to speak languages in a supernatural way. Clearly, it's languages because they can hear it being spoken in their own language. And it names some of the places: Parthians, Medes, Elamites, Mesopotamia, Judah, Cappadocia, Pontus, in Asia. It names all of these places, right? Verse 11, Cretes, Arabians, we do hear them speak in our tongues the wonderful works of God. So you got people who should not know how to speak these languages, who all of a sudden supernaturally have the ability to speak these languages and proclaim the word of God. All right. Now that's clearly some miracle that's not happened before, because a lot of people today running around claiming that they can speak in tongues when they decide to become a missionary have to go to language school because they can't just get on an airplane, step off the airplane in a foreign country and speak their language in a supernatural way. So which would call into question, does the gift that we see here exist today? And which I don't believe it does. All right. Let's continue. Then verse 14. So they were all amazed, verse 12, and were in doubt, saying one to another, what meaneth this? So a lot of people are walking, what's going on? They don't get it. All right. Others mocking said, these men are full of new wine. Others are like, they're just drunk. I don't know what's going on here. They can't come up with any other explanation. They're drunk. That's the only thing I can figure out. But Peter, standing up with the 11, lifted up his voice and said unto them, Ye men of Judah, and all ye that dwell at Jerusalem, be this known unto you, and hearken to my words. For these are not drunken, as you suppose, saying it is but the third hour of the day. But this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel. Stop right there. So Peter is telling them, hey, the prophet Joel, that minor prophet, he spoke about this. And you are witnessing it come to pass. So to understand what's happening here, he says this is the fulfillment of what happened in the book of Joel. Now here's the question. If everything here fulfills everything in Joel, then there's nothing to look to in the future. If here doesn't fulfill everything in Joel, then there is something to look to in the future. We have to determine what was fulfilled here, what wasn't fulfilled here, what will be fulfilled in the future, and what will it look like. So, was everything fulfilled? Yes or no? Some of it, which part? Which part is there to look forward to, and what is that going to look like? Is it going to look like a revival? If it is, when? But the first thing we have to just figure out what is going on here. So here's my challenge to you. Very simple. First and foremost, I want you to look up in a Bible dictionary, study Bible, Bible handbook, and I want you to read an overview of the book of Joel. All right. I want you to get things like author. What do we know about the author? Do we know anything about the author? The dating of the book. Seems to be a lot of we don't really know anything about the author. I'll just give you a clue. We don't really know anything about the author. And really, we don't even know a lot about the dating of the book. We don't really know a lot about the dating of the book. Now, we do know that there's some things that had happened at this point in time. We do know that whatever is going on, we do know, like in many cases, the date is unknown. I'm going to try to be careful not to give too much away here. But we do know that the book of Joel, his words were given at a time when God judged Israel by a twofold judgment, an invasion of locusts and an invasion of an army. And these judgments, by these judgments, the agriculture and agricultural-based economy had been ruined, and it even affected the temple offerings. That's what we seem to know. So whatever was going on in Joel, judgment had appeared to occur. Locust and an army. Now, if we can identify the army, what did they do? Do we know anything? But clearly there's some judgment there. And in the midst of these words of judgment, what judgment? Who's being judged? What's happening? Is this referring to Babylonian captivity, to Judah? Is it referring to Israel, Assyrians? These are some things you need to figure out. Figure out the author, the timing, the context, the history, and then figure out the basic message of the book of Joel. What is the basic message? Who is the message being delivered to? Now, once you figure all of that out, right? So first, I want you to just get that basic overview. Don't worry about interpreting the book of Joel. Don't worry about prophecy. Don't worry about Acts 2. Just figure out who, what, where, when, how to the book of Joel. Who, what, where, when, and how. Just figure that out. You can use, again, Bible dictionary, Bible handbook, study Bible, use everything. And just write it out. And use multiple sources. Well, there's a disagreement here on the dating. There's a disagreement. Okay, find out what there's agreement on. Try to get the basic elements down so you have some context of what is going on in Joel. Now, once you have that figured out, then I want you to take a little journey in the book of Joel. In fact, if you'll go to the book of Joel, right, you can do this. I can do this a number of different ways, but let's do this. Go to Joel chapter 2. Joel chapter 2, and then read verse 28. Joel 2, verse 28. And it shall come to pass afterward. Stop right there. Okay, here's your assignment number 1. Overview the book of Joel. That's a simple assignment. Now, remember, Acts 2, what just happened, Peter stands up and says, this is in fact, let me read it again. I don't want to use incorrect language here. I got to keep my hand in Joel. Acts chapter 2. I want you to know here, but this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel. What just happened there in the day of Pentecost? Peter says this was prophesied by Joel. All right, now go to back to Joel chapter 2. This prophecy starts in verse 28, but there's a very important thing that happens here. And it came to pass afterward. Stop right there. So number 1, the overview. Number 2, this prophecy happens after what? Afterward. After what? Something happens before the fulfillment of this prophecy. What happened before? Because after that, then this prophecy, which we know is fulfilled in Acts chapter 2. We at least know, because Peter says this is what Joel spoke of. This is what Joel spoke of. But when we go back to Joel 2:28, and it shall come to pass afterward. Afterward what? After what? I need you to figure out the after what. So number one, an overview. Number two, figure out the after what in Joel 2:28. Then number three, and it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in these days will I pour out my spirit. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and the terrible day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered from the Mount Zion, and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance. And the Lord has said, and the remnant whom the Lord shall call. Whoa. Okay, we got a lot going on. So, number one, an overview. Number two, the prophecy in Joel 2:28, making sure I look at it, happens after something. After what? What comes before this? Then, here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at the prophecy in Joel 2:28 to 32. And I want you to go back to Acts 2, and I want you to compare what's in Joel 2 with Acts 2. How much is repeated? Is it repeated exactly? Is it repeated partially? Does Peter leave some things out? What part? I want you to just draw a comparison. Here's what you do. Take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. On one side, put Acts 2. And Acts 2, it starts what verse? Let me go back here. Keep closing my Bible. Don't know why I do that. Acts 2, because I'm used to just having it sitting on the pulpit. But when you're here, Acts 2, it starts off in verse 16. So verse 17 and I think down to verse 21. 17 to 21. So on one side of the page, you have Acts 2, 17 to 21. On the other side of the page, you have Joel 2, 28 to 32. Right? That's what you just write on the top of each side of the page, right? Acts 2, Joel 2, right? Then you just start listing the verse. What is said? What is said in Joel, for example? Joel 2, that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, all right? So this is a prophecy of the spirit being poured out on all flesh. Let me go back to Acts 2. Is it the same? Acts 2. And it shall come to pass in the last day, saith God, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. That is exact. That's the same. Upon all flesh, right? So I would have all flesh. I would have the verse from Acts and the verse from Joel. Then I would continue on down, right? Each element. When I find elements that you just list the elements. And then you can compare. That's in Joel. That's not in Acts. Why is it not in Acts? Why does Peter leave it out? Because is that a prophecy in Joel that wasn't fulfilled there in Acts? So Peter's only giving you the things that were fulfilled there? Now, just do that. All right, there's more I could do right there, all right? Now, that's going to take you forever to do. So first of all, I want you to do an overview on the book of Joel. Overview in the book of Joel. All right, overview in the book of Joel. Understand the who, what, where, when, and how. I want you to understand. I want you to answer the question that this prophecy in Joel 2 that's repeated, that's supposedly fulfilled in Acts 2, we are told that it shall come to pass afterward. After what? What precedes? What comes before the fulfillment of this prophecy? What must happen first? Right? Determine that. Then compare Joel 2 and Acts 2. Each element. Here's the prophecy. Here's boom, boom, boom. Same. Oh, look at. Here's 4 things that are missing. 4 things mentioned in Joel, not mentioned in Acts. Why are they not mentioned? Now, if you just that's all you're going to do. That's all you're going to do. That's all you're going to do. That's it. I'm going to stop right there. All right. Very simple assignment. Well, yeah, I think that's simple. That's simple. You can do all of that. You can do all of that with just using the internet. You can get the basic background of the book of Joel, the who, what, where, when, and how. Shouldn't have any problem. Figuring out afterward, that should just require the text. You can try to figure it out with the text. You can also use some commentaries if you need to and see what they say. Yeah, actually do this. Figuring out the afterward. Look at the verses before and see if you can figure it out. Also consult at least 3 or 4 commentaries to see if they all agree. All right? All right. Repeat the instructions one more time. All right. Yes. I love when someone wants me to repeat the instructions. Yes. I'm so happy. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. That's the first time that's ever happened. All right. Yes. All right. Here we go. All right. Instruction number 1. Do an overview to the book of Joel. Boom. Very simple. Very straightforward. I want the who, what, where, when, and how. Who, what, where, when, and how. Everything you can figure out. Who's going on, what's going on, who's being written to, what's happening, context, everything. Just a basic, think of it as a basic book background, that basic book background, right? Everything you can know, right? Number 2, and Joel 2, verse 28, it says, and it shall come to pass afterward. After what? This prophecy that Joel is going to give, he says this prophecy is going to happen after something. Now, Peter comes along and says, hey, that prophecy in Joel, it's been fulfilled. So clearly, when this prophecy happens, that other thing must have occurred. What was it? What was it? See if you can figure that out. Look at the text. Also look at a number of commentaries to see if there's agreement. All right? In fact, let me verify something here. Right? Because I am relying on the King James to pull that off. Because I would be very embarrassed if the other translations doesn't even translate it that way. So give me a second here. Now I'm glad that someone asked this question, but I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to go to Joel 2. I'll repeat the rest of the instructions in just a second. Joel 2:28. I'm going to just verify something here. Okay. Yes, this is Joel 2:28 and a number of English translations. New International Version. And afterward, same thing, New Living Translation. Then after doing all of those things, ESV, and it shall come to pass afterward. So you got to figure out after what? This prophecy is going to come about after something else. After what? Figure out that after part. Again, look at the verses before Joel 2:28, and then look at least 3, at a minimum 3 commentaries. If you find disagreement in the commentaries, expand it to 5. If you still find it, expand it to 6 or 7 until you run out of resources. If you find 3 and they're all perfect agreement, then you're probably okay. All right. Then number 3, on a piece of paper, draw a line. Boom, right down the middle of the page. On one side, you put the Joel 2:28 to 32, just write Joel 2:28 to 32. On the other side of the paper, you put Acts 2. Let me give you the scriptures again. Acts 2, verses 16 to 21. All right? Then underneath that, you just start listing out everything in the prophecy. Go from Joel. So number 1, you on one side of the page, you have Joel 2:28, and then I would write this down. I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Boom. Number 1. I'd go on the Acts side. I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Perfectly the same. Next, your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. All right. Sons and daughters shall prophesy. That's in Joel 2. Go to Acts. Does it say the same thing? Right. Then next, I think it's visions. Your old man shall dream visions and your young man shall see. So there's going to be dreams and visions. Write those down. Old men dreams, young men visions. Acts it just list every element out on the Joel side, on the Acts side. And when you're done, then you determine, after you've looked at that, determine what is missing in Acts that's listed in Joel. Joel lists it, Acts don't. Then determine what's missing. What's different? Determine the difference between the two. All right, I'm not asking you to figure out why they're different yet, but just determine if they're different. All right? So I'll give it a second. Does that make sense? Or do you need me to explain it again? Or do you have a separate question? I'll give them a chance to answer. For those listening later, I'm chatting with people who are listening to us live, and they're able to ask questions. You can always listen to us live using the Spreaker app. There's a little chat icon. You can always ask your questions, all right? So we're about a 60-second behind. I'm talking, it takes about 60 seconds for the people listening to catch up to what I'm currently saying right now. So we're going to give them a second to see if they need me to repeat that in any way, shape, or form. If they don't answer, then we'll wrap this up. All right. Now we're still working on Psalm 37. Let's not forget Psalm 37. We're still working on that Bible study exercise as well. But we're gonna. I think we have to do this because that whole podcast episode about rapture or revival brings this up. So we can't just ignore it. We've got to deal with it in a far deeper way than they did. They didn't even bother to really dig in. All right, I'm not getting any other questions, so I'm going to assume that my repeating of the instructions was so clear that everyone now has perfect understanding, and the reason they're not responding is because they're already working on the Bible study exercise. That's what I'm going to go with, right? Because it helps me sleep better at night. All right? And thank you, Twyla, for tuning in on a Sunday evening, 4th of July. Thank you for listening to teaching and putting off what other plans you have for this evening for now. All right. And hopefully after this, then you can have all the fun you planned on having on this 4th of July Sunday evening. All right. Okay. I'm going to assume that's everything. Let me check email just to make sure no one has emailed me, because those are some complicated instructions, but I think we did pretty good clarifying them. And we have no email questions. All right. So, all right. There you go. We'll stop right there. I think that gets us started. And then we'll come back. We'll do, maybe some of this may show up. Some of this may show up in church. For example, if we can have a Wednesday evening service, we may do a Joel, overview. So some of this may move to the preaching, but that's okay. Bible study exercises can take all kinds of different shapes and forms. And if it does that, then everyone in the church show up with a Bible dictionary. And then if Twyla can be here Wednesday, and if we have a Wednesday evening service, then maybe we'll work on Joel 2. We need to finish our study on typology. We've got so much to do. All right. So, but we'll make the good use of our time. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hopefully that was beneficial. And hopefully that was helpful. I think this is important, though. The bottom line is the reason we're doing this is this prophecy, people do so many things with it. Like, hey, this prophecy, it was for, Peter said this is what was prophesied in Joel, but it wasn't complete. So there's a future part. And that future part, is the future part now a revival? So was it partially fulfilled in Acts 2, but then it's going to be fulfilled again in the future? But in our time, when? There's so much there to figure out, and that's what we're going to have to do so. But we can't interpret the text until we do the observation of the text. Make that very clear. If you try to interpret before observation, your interpretation is just broken. So we got to throw aside all of our presuppositions and just go look at, okay, what's going on in the book of Joel? Well, what's the book about? Who, what, where, when, how? After what? We got to figure out the after what, if that's very key to understanding the prophecy, right? And then we got to compare the prophecy as it is written in Joel 2 and as it is repeated in Acts 2. And we got to figure out, that's the same. Wait. That's missing. And then we got to figure out why it's missing. There may be an obvious answer, okay? And then we'll go from there. All right. Thank you. Twyla just answered in the church chat that she got it. All right, so good. Thank you. All right, awesome. And she's typing, so I'm going to make sure everything is good here before I say goodbye. Her app may have crashed. Give me 1 second. Oh, okay. Sometimes on Spreaker, it does that. Let me turn the volume down really quick. I bet you sometimes it does that. Let me pull this up. Pull up the chat. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, it's not showing up. For some reason, the chat, if there's anyone else out there, your chat currently is not showing up in the chat. I do not know why. Let me go back out and come back in. Yes, it's not showing up. So if you had any questions, email me at newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. You send me your questions. I will repeat. I'll do whatever I need you to do. I will help you figure it out and make sure you can participate. Remember, the goal of the Bible study exercise is I'm trying to equip saints. And the best way to equip you is getting you into the scriptures for yourself, not simply teaching you, getting you into the scriptures for yourself, working on this together. We'll see how this goes. The Psalm 37 study is going relatively well. We had some people participating at the beginning. I haven't seen Twyla's notes on Psalm 37. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, but anybody else working on Psalm 37, let me know. We have made it to verse 7 on Psalm 37. I think our work on verse 6, I hope it made sense. I hope my work on I'm really bothered that I didn't do a great job on 37:6, but I really think that I think I was fair with the text, saying, hey, this is how we can understand it. But I think there's this theological part we need as well. So it'll be interesting to see the feedback. So feedback on anything today, let me know. I wish I would have gotten more done today, but I didn't. I apologize for that, but hopefully I think the most important thing I accomplished today, I really feel like sometimes I don't feel good about it, but I feel the sermon this morning dealing with the collapse of the building in Miami with the Tower of Siloam in Luke 13. I think it's very, 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 very important stuff. So if you didn't hear that, please listen to that because that's very, very important. Very important. If you need help finding that sermon, email me and I'll get it. It's anywhere podcast. Put it this way. Anywhere podcasts are found, it's there. You can look for the VBC podcast. You can look for the Theological Musings podcast, and you'll find the sermon. The sermon will be listed under the Theological Musings or the VBC podcast. VBC or Theological Musings, you will find it, okay? Some places it will be under Theology Central, okay? So, yeah, it's all about RSS feeds and who's pulling from what feed, and yeah, it gets all convoluted. The bottom line is we try to make our content available on every platform on the planet Earth and other planets. So there you have it. All right. Everyone have a great evening. A great, great, great evening. Be safe. And remember, yes, praise God that we live in a country where there is freedom. Be happy about that. I got no problem celebrating the 4th of July. Just remember, let's never put nation before our God, and let's never become guilty of idolatry of a country. And let's always make sure that we understand we're not of this world and our citizenship is in heaven. All right. Okay, there you have it. I'm getting notifications right now that our episodes are now available on the Edify Christian Podcast app. So they were behind in loading all of our stuff today. All right, thank you, Twyla. Thank you very much. Again, for those who like the Bible study exercise, you may want to thank Twyla. She's a big reason I keep doing this because of her work on doing the Bible study exercises. There's a person out there by the name of Ben who did some initial work on Psalm 37. That's motivated me to keep working on Psalm 37. So whoever you are, whenever you can do a Bible study exercise and participate, hopefully not only are you benefiting when you share it with me, you're not only encouraging me, that motivates me to continue to do more. So then you are in reality helping and benefiting other people as well. So we're all working together. We're all just trying to figure out this Christian life to the best of our ability. And hopefully this is helpful. So everyone have a great night. Thanks for listening. I don't know if I'll be back here tomorrow. Don't know. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see how it's going. All right. But I'll just always be looking to see. Just remember, according to Pocket Cast, the Pocket Cast app, this is hilarious. I've mentioned this before, but according to the Pocket Cast podcasting app, which is one of the apps I use, Theology Central is listed, are you ready for this, as an hourly podcast. We are listed as a podcast that releases new episodes every hour. Somehow we release so many episodes that according to their algorithm, we are now an hourly podcast. That is hilarious. I can understand maybe daily, but hourly, I think that's a little extreme, okay? Hey, Pocket Cast, thank you for making sure all of our content is available, but I think that's a little, hyperbole there, right? Hourly, I mean, come on. We should be at least listed as minute by minute, right? Maybe we can do so many episodes that we're now a minute podcast. Yeah, I just think that's funny that we are now there. That's pretty accurate. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but we definitely produce a lot of episodes. We do that, and hopefully people benefit from them. What I lack in quality, I try to make up in quantity. All right. So that's all I can do. Everyone have a great night. God bless.